HighBridge, a division of Recorded Books, presents A Fortune for Your Disaster, Poems, by Hanif Abdurraqib, read by Hanif Abdurraqib. Cutter. I knew a sailor once. Got tangled in the rigging. We pulled him out, but it took him 5 minutes to cough. He said it was like going home. The Prestige. The poem begins not where the knife enters, but where the blade twists. Some wounds cannot be hushed, no matter the way one writes of blood and what reflection arrives in its pooling. The poem begins with pain as a mirror, inside of which I adjust the tie the way my father taught me before my first funeral, and so the poem begins with old grief again at my neck. On the radio, a singer born in a place where children watch the sky for bombs is trying to sell me on love as something akin to war. I have no lie to offer as treacherous as this one. I was most like the bullet when I viewed the body as a door. I'm past that now. No one will bury their kin when desire becomes a fugitive between us. There will be no folded flag at the doorstep. A person only gets to be called a widow once, and then they are simply lonely, the bluest period. Gratitude, not for love itself, but for the way it can end without a house on fire. This is how I plan to leave next, unceremonious as birth in a country overrun by the ungrateful living. The poem begins with a chain of well-meaning liars walking one by one off the earth's edge. That's who died and made me king, who died and made you. If your hate could be turned into electricity, it would light up the whole world. Nikola Tesla. Never mistake what it is for what it looks like. Terrence Hayes. To the city I left, to the city I left, to the city that took me back. A Fortune for Your Disaster. The Pledge. I want you so badly, but you could be anyone. Florence Welch. It is once again the summer of my discontent, and this is how we do it, is creeping out of some open window, same way it was in the summer of '95, when my heartbreak was a different animal, howling at the same clouds, and the cops broke up the block party at Franklin Park, right before the song hit the last verse, because someone from the right hood locked eyes with someone from the wrong one, and me and my boys ran into the corner store and tucked the chocolate bars into the humid caverns of our pants pockets, and later licked the melted chocolate from its sterling wrappers in the woods behind Mario's crib with the girls we liked too much to want to know if they liked us back. And there it was, the summer I learned to kiss the air and imagine it bending into a mouth. And here it is again, the summer everything I love outside is melting. And I tell my boys, there is a reason songs from the 90s are having a revival. And it's because the heart and tongue are the muscles with the most irresistible histories. And I'm kind of buzzed. I'm kind of buzzing. I'm kind of a hive with no begging and hollow cavities. There is intimacy in the moment where the eyes of two enemies meet. There is a tenderness in knowing what desire ties you to a person, even if you have spent your dreaming hours cutting them a casket from the tree in their mother's front yard. It is a blessing to know someone wants a funeral for you, a coming together of your people from their faraway corners to tell some story about your thefts and triumphs, all of your better selves shaking their heads over a table, chocolate staining their teeth. I suppose there is also intimacy in the moment when a lover becomes an enemy, though it is tougher to say when it happens. Probably when there is a song you can't remember them living inside of anymore, even if both of you curled your lips around the words in a car at some impossible hour of morning, driving away from the place you met. I like my agony threaded together by the same chorus. Not everything is Sisyphean. No one ever wants to imagine themselves as the boulder. There are several poems in this book that have this title to them, And this was kind of an exercise in my understanding that I knew very little about flowers. I grew up in a place where I did not get to see many flowers, and so my relationship to flowers is pretty distant at best. And through that curiosity, I wanted to write a series of poems asking questions of the space I had to explore and uproot my curiosities with the things that came from the earth. How can Black people write about flowers at a time like this? Dear reader, with our heels digging into the good mud at a swamp's edge, you might tell me something about the dandelion head and how it is not a flower itself, but a plant made up of many small flowers at its crown. And Lord knows, I have been called by what I look like more than I have been called by what I actually am. And I wish to return the favor for the purpose of this exercise, which, too, is an attempt at fashioning something pretty out of seeds refusing to make anything worthwhile of their burial. Size me up and skip whatever semantics arrive to the tongue first. Say, that boy, he looked like a hollowed-out grandfather clock. He looked like $1 million God with a 2-cent heaven. Like all it takes is one kiss, and before morning you could scatter his whole mind across a field. Watching a fight at the New Haven Dog Park. First 2 dogs, and then their owners. The mailman still hands me bills like I should feel lucky to have my name on anything in this town. And I've been here 14 months, and all I get is paper telling me who I owe, and when I owe them, and what might be taken from me if I don't hand over the faces of dead men. And I love the electric architecture of noise on the corner of Chapel and State, where the old dudes who drown their afternoons in warm liquid build porches from neon glass and yell, "I see you, boy," at the Yale kids who walk by dressed in salmon-colored windbreakers, regardless of whether the wind is present or asking to be broken. And I, too, dress for the hell I want and not the hell that is most likely coming. And at the fence outside the dog park, my own dog pulls towards home, and all my dogs pull towards home. And I am a leash sometimes, and I send flowers to funerals from 3 states away now. And I'm saying that which forces us to bare our teeth is all a matter of perspective. And inside the dog park, the game of fetch has gone awry. And the dog that looks like a wheat field is circling the dog that looks like a melted ice cream cone. And the wheat field is all teeth, and the melted cone is a trembling mess. And when the stakes are most violent, I suppose we all become what we resemble most. And what I mean is that the men on the corner are only drunks until the cops come, and then they are scholars. And I am from the kind of place where no one makes a fist if they aren't going to throw the thing. And when the wheat field lunges, the melted cone knows what's what and sidesteps the glistening teeth with impeccable precision. And I can't believe that all of this is over a stick, but I imagine that to a dog, a stick is an entire country. And surely I've thrown hands in the name of less, and the dogs have owners, and the owners are chest to chest and yelling at each other about which dog started the fight that is a fight in name only, the wheat field dog lunging and missing and lunging and missing. And I feel guilty when I start to hope that the dog owners throw a punch at each other, just so that I can remember what it looks like when a fist determines its own destiny. And I haven't seen a real fight since Chris from Linden mopped up some kid from the suburbs back in '02 outside of the Dairy Queen after the kid had one too many jokes about Chris's pops catching 25 years on the back of some real shit. And Chris knocked that boy out so fast he ain't even get touched. And we carried Chris home with his clean face and clean hands. And so I really don't have the time for all this theater at the dog park. And I am getting too old. And I want only a good dog most days. And I'm saying I want a dog that will never ask me to finish something it started. And I'm saying I want a dog that will never make me clean its blood out of the streets. There's a series of poems in this book written in the voice of Marvin Gaye, or the imagined voice of Marvin Gaye, from the late 70s after he recorded the album Here My Dear. So it's the ghost of Marvin Gaye speaking from the depths of revisiting that album and looking out upon the modern world. And so this is the first in a series of poems that is imagined in Marvin Gaye's voice. The ghost of Marvin Gaye plays the dozens with the pop charts. Your mouth so wide, it swallow a whole city in one bite. Your mouth so wide, all the black people in Detroit don't remember what their parents danced to. You think you so black, you paint the stars on your chest. You think you so black, you got a bed in everybody's house. You take the last chicken leg and leave meat on the bone. You think the tea just got sweet from the sugar. You so ugly, the mirror trembled at your new white face, and then you walked into the mirror, and then you became the mirror, and then you tore the skin from anyone who stood before you, and then there was a Trader Joe's in the lot where we used to have the block party, and then everything you drank from became a whisper. Your mouth so wide, when it opens, I can see myself crawling out. Starved and thrashing against your tongue, an old suit hanging from my fragile arms. I have tried on all of your clothes, and still nothing fits but the blood. Everybody want to make soul, but don't nobody want to chew a hole through the night, small enough for a bullet to pass through, and pull each of their lovers into it. Everybody want to make soul, but don't nobody want to hemorrhage a whole family into sweat and white powder and so much sex they will never speak of what killed you. Your mama so full, she a whole planet. Your mama so black, she everywhere but ain't never on time. Your mama so black, she sang Hound Dog first and died with nothing to her name but the drink that carried her to the grave. Your mama so black, she's my mama too. Your mama saw the gun and let you bleed out and ran screaming into the sunlight. Your mama so black, she knows when there ain't nothing left worth saving. Your mama so black, she will come for you and know by your smell that you ain't one of her own. Your mama so black, she will carry you in her teeth to the river and hold you down until you become either holy or dead. Welcome to Heartbreak. It is the version of me fading in photos that I most wish to dance with. Just once, before the coughing black makes a ghost of him. No one asks me to smile these days, and so here is my mouth, again a straight line, border between an ocean and thirst. I thumb the edges of the picture frame and consider the wood. What tree had to fall in order for this younger and smiling version of myself to have a home? It is the killing season again. All of the flowers drag the crowns of their heads along the snow and die with a prayer of softer ground on their lips. I wish this type of betrayal on no one, being born out of that which will be your undoing. Imagine instead the place where you have a bed of your own and a table to sit across from someone who laughs thick and echoing as an open palm at your smallest joy, and then the fingers close. I tend to think forgiveness looks the way it does in the movies, like two white people kissing in the rain, and it's always white people kissing in the rain on television, and it's a question of hair, I imagine, the things too precious to be given over to the illusion of vulnerability. I have paid my tithes in this church, though, drawing my desires long through a city of millions with wet sneakers and dying flowers exploding from tissue paper, and I have emerged from this shrinking heaven half drowned with a heart molding at the edges. And speaking of the heart, I love most what it is until it decides it isn't. First a weapon and then not. First a morning wherein you see yourself briefly whole and next to someone else who is briefly whole and then not. I'm talking about the end of love. How the door closes one night and never reopens. The coffee mug left with a lover's unshakable stains in the bottom, and the single fork from the infant night in the first shared apartment, and all of the relics we have to craft the leash used to keep our misery close. What I meant to say about kissing in the rain is that it seems to be about a mercy that I cannot touch for what the water has been known to undo, and what of myself I might see in the wake of its undoing. Mercy, like the boy pulling back a fist as a small stray dog below him trembles with its eyes shut. Mercy, that boy then walking into the arms of his mother, who once dragged him from a home ransacked by a man's violence. Mercy, the city unfolding its wide and generous palms over your skin the way a city does when it opens itself up in darkness to pour into its open mouth, and you, too, wait for the night to spill itself into your echoing terraces of grief and call you outside and tell you that it is almost your season, darling. It is almost the season of your favorite flower, and the burial ground giving way to its tiny and exploding lips, and how they exist for you and no one else. How can black people write about flowers at a time like this? I have been told that in any discussion of weather, a warning is more severe than a watch. Peep the two boys on the schoolyard, making a halo of dead grass, their hands in the shape an elder taught them to make when describing a scar from another violent era. No one is about that real shit until they are. In Xenia, the people were warned to watch the skies and still stayed in the fields when the clouds locked arms and began their pirouette along the already barren landscape. That real shit ain't about nothing until it is. After the tornado, only the witch hazel survived, poking its tendrils up from the dirt, twisted fingers, cursing the sky. Survive all manner of cataclysm and find yourself in dark recesses, a salve for the wicked living of someone you do not know and are attached to nonetheless. Between you and me, I was warned to watch the space where the fissure began, and still I filled my mouth with cake. Enjoy the sweetness now, before it comes back to claim a space that you'd rather keep hidden. The difference between a warning and a threat is all a matter of what you've lived through. Watch the fist so shut the eye of a boy who was warned about talking slick. Watch the thin tentacles of blood surround the fresh damage, the only surviving instrument. This is a poem that has a title that is the same as other poems in the book. So much of this book is based around heartbreak and coming to terms with heartbreak, but also about the film The Prestige, which I got very obsessed with through the writing of this book, particularly the character of Nikola Tesla, played by David Bowie, but also the real-life Nikola Tesla, who was in charge of so much invention. And as we do when we think and talk about invention, we often don't think about the cost of it. And so I wrote a series of poems considering the cost of innovation, using Nikola Tesla kind of as a window. It's not like Nikola Tesla knew all of those people were going to die. Everyone wants to write about God, but no one wants to imagine their God as a finger trembling inside a grenade pin's ring, or the red vine of blood coughed into a child's palm, while they cradle the head of a dying parent. Few things are more dangerous than a man who is capable of dividing himself into several men, each of them with a unique river of desire on their tongue. It is also magic to pray for a daughter and find yourself with an endless march of boys who all have the smile of a motherfucker who wronged you and never apologized. No one wants to imagine their God as the knuckles cracking on a father watching his son picking a good switch from the tree, and certainly no one wants to imagine their God as a tree. Enough with the foolishness of hope and how it bruises the walls of the home where two people sit, stubbornly in love with the idea of staying. If one must pray, I imagine it is most worthwhile to pray toward endings. The only difference between sunsets and funerals is whether or not a town mistakes the howls of a crying woman for madness. You about to tell her you love her, we off that. I text you, and instead say, distance is a mirror inside of which the only echo is your face, but then I delete it, and I type something to make you think I laughed at the joke, the one about a dog, the one about a boy, the one about making your own ending and walking through it. And I thought of you during the movie, in the dark of the theater, when the man had a gun pointed at his head, and he closed his eyes and prayed as if God has any sway over the evil unlocked in a stranger's hands. And I thought of you on the way home, when the car was being pushed through the gap of snow by 5 people and still moving only inches. And I think of you now, when the blades of the helicopter sever the single cloud and it becomes 2 drifting corpses, one for each coast. And the thing about texting a joke is that no one cares whether it's actually funny. And when we are not in the same room, I imagine a lie to be better than silence, and the word hollow in any language sounds like something the body wants no part of. And I text you again. I have made my own ending, and the door is yawning, and on the other side of it I am praying, and I am pushing, and I am drifting away. And the funny thing about the boy who cries wolf is that he eventually becomes one. One side of an interview with the ghost of Marvin Gaye, after Eve L. Ewing. Answer: yes, he was a preacher. Answer: you let a man see God once and he'll learn to make a country out of anything. Answer: I think what I'm saying is that I prayed to any sound I could tempt out of a body. Answer: the bullet is like any other thing born an orphan. Answer: I mean, it's just looking for another new place to call home. Answer: hunger is whatever shape the moonlight pulls your shadow into. Answer: yes, I served as many masters as it took. Answer: it wasn't only sex, but people hear what they want when the world is on fire. Answer: Smoke said, once you make people believe that you got something they need, you can make them believe anything. Answer: yes, I grew tired of waiting on my grave, so I seduced one out of thin air. Answer: commandments? At least 8. Answer: the joke was that to be sanctified, you gotta set a distance between yourself and what you love. Answer: no, I never got to ask for her forgiveness. Answer: no, she never came back. Answer: that's the thing about being empty, I guess. Answer: everyone who thinks of death as a peaceful place is still alive. Big portion of this book kind of, or at least the first section of it, revolves around my moving back to Columbus, Ohio from New Haven, Connecticut after undergoing a pretty intense heartbreak. And during that packing process, which was really depressing and kind of dark, it was on Monday afternoon and I wanted to go to the movies, and the movie Logan had come out on that past Friday. And I didn't know about it or hear anything about it, and I didn't read any reviews. I just assumed it was kind of a run-of-the-mill superhero movie, because, it was like Hugh Jackman playing Wolverine. And so I went alone to see Logan in the middle of the afternoon, and I was the only person in the theater, and very quickly I realized that the movie was not a run-of-the-mill superhero movie and was in fact a very dark and depressing meditation on the fragility of life and the people we leave behind. And so I ended up sobbing alone in the theater, and a theater attendant, as the movie ended, was sweeping up and saw me kind of crying in my chair and asked me if I was okay. And I said, well, no. And she looked at me for a second and shrugged and said, okay, and kind of kept going on with her tasks. And I will say, sometimes the end of a relationship can feel like you're not being seen by the person who you care for, who cares about you. And so there was something fascinating about being in public and being in pain and being seen by a complete stranger, even if they could not offer any comfort. With boxes piled at the foot of the stairs, I go to see Logan. I will not spoil the ending, though what is there to spoil, but to say there was a casket in the place you would imagine a casket to be. Depending on how you define burial, the ending is unspectacular. My pal died, not when the pill bottle rolled empty from his unfurling palm. It was some time after that, when I told his old girlfriend, I have maybe been in love with you the whole time. How can black people write about flowers at a time like this? Kehinde painted that man Barack with roses at his feet. The saying goes, get your roses while you're still alive to smell them. Show me a way to govern without violence, and I will show you a way to not feel shame inside of the moment when you recognizes their face in the face of their captor and falls in love with the familiarity. I too have licked the blood from a mirror in an attempt to see more clearly, the lips thick with the familiar slang flooding the tongue. Get me to the curve of a lover's neck while I am still alive enough for my nose to resist disappearing my blessings into ash. Depending on what is in bloom, I might summon the blade. I might undo the forest winding its way along the sides of my face so that I can more closely resemble a man worthy of waking to roses at his feet. In a kill or be killed nation, give to my open palms something that might die before I do, until all that remain are the thorns pushing their lips together and begging for touch. It is maybe time to admit that Michael Jordan definitely pushed off. That one time, in the '98 NBA Finals, and in praise of one man's hand on the waist of another, and in praise of the ways we guide our ships to the shore of some brief and gilded mercy, I touch my fingers to the hips of this vast and immovable grief, and push once more. And who is to say, really, how much weight was behind Jordan's palm on that night in Utah? And on that same night, 1 year earlier, the paramedics pulled my drowning mother from the sheets where she slept, and they said it must have felt like a whole hand was pushing down on her lungs. And I spent the whole summer holding my breath in bed until the small black spots danced on the ceiling. And I am sorry that there is no way to describe this that is not about agony, or that is not about someone being torn from the perch of their comfort. And on the same night, a year before my mother died, Jordan wept on the floor of the United Center locker room after winning another title, because it was Father's Day, and his father went to sleep on the side of a road in '93 and woke up a ghost. And there is no moment worth falling to our knees and galloping toward like the one that sings our dead into the architecture. And so yes, for a moment in 1998, Michael Jordan made what space he could on the path between him and his father's small and breathing grace. And so yes, there is an ocean between us, the length of my arm, and I have built nothing for you that can survive it. And from here, I am close enough to be seen, but not close enough to be cherished. And from here, I can see every possible ending before we even touch. I lived in New Haven, Connecticut for 2.5 years, and New Haven, Connecticut is known for Yale, but also known for its pizza. And one night in New Haven, Connecticut, one Friday night, due to some delivery mishap, the pizza places kind of systemically ran out of cheese about midday, and many of them just closed up shop and, said, we'll get them tomorrow. A few of them stayed open and tried to negotiate this thing where they were serving people pizzas with no cheese, just sauce and crust and some toppings in some cases. I lived above one such pizza place that attempted that scam, and it did not go well. And an argument ensued that I had the pleasure of sitting by my window and listening to. So this is a piece about the night in Connecticut where pizza places ran out of cheese, but it is also about the dissolution of a marriage. Glamour on the West streets, silver over everything. From the humid brick building below my humid brick building, a woman bellows at the pizza man who, it seems, threw no cheese atop the crust in its red river of sauce because, as he shouts above the sirens of State Street and the growing crowd lined outside his shop, it is Friday night, and he is woefully short on mozzarella, and there are far better pizza options on every corner of this city, overpriced, and tonight bursting at the seams with lonely people who will seek the warmth spilling from the edges of a cardboard box and onto their laps and into their fingers on the walk back to a newly empty apartment. I love the heat, for how it separates the desire for touch from the practicality of it. If it gets too hot to fuck, as it did for Mookie and Tina, then we're all on our own sinking islands anyway. There is no cheese in this town anymore. And what could be worse than the fraction of a dream behind every door you crawl to? It is Friday, and surely some of my people are praising the fresh coin in their bank accounts, and what a tragedy to spend it on a half-finished freedom. And the argument below has poured out into the streets and the waiting masses, and I imagine this is no longer a
Sample complete. Ready to continue?